By the age of 23, I had enough money to have the option to retire and be financially free forever with no work. And to do that, I followed a nice, simple 5-step process that I'm going to share with you in this video so you can do the same. Let's get into it. So it's going to take you 5 to 10 years to do this. And that's the first thing you need to understand is this is not something we can rush. I started at 18 and I got it done by 23, which by an average standard is not bad going. It might take you up to 10 years. It can take a decade of your life to set you up for the other, 50, 60 years that you might be blessed to be on this planet for. And you can do it through some get-rich-quick scheme like a crypto thing or a Ponzi scheme or something, but the chances of that working are so incredibly slim. You've got to realize the people that sell these shiny get-rich-quick-in-a-year schemes or whatever, it worked maybe for them, but they are like 0.001% of people that it actually worked for. So we want to do this properly, and I want to give you a way that actually guarantees that you get rich slowly as opposed to quickly. Now, by most standards, 5 to 10 years to get rich and retire is incredibly fast anyway, so we need a bit of sacrifice. So the first thing we need to do is understand what you want, because in order to retire, different people have different ideas of retirement. And so really there's going to be 3 different types of person watching this video, and you need to decide which one you are. So you either want comfort, freedom, or status. What I'm going to do is give you some numbers here, and I want you to assume that these numbers are hitting your bank account every single year after tax with no work, okay? So comfort is going to be around 50k a year, freedom is going to be around 100k a year, and status is probably going to be 250k a year plus. And so this money is coming in, imagine this money is coming into your bank account with 0% tax and 0 hours of work. It just magically appears in your bank account for you to spend, okay? Now, you need to decide right now, how much money do you need to basically be happy and to feel like you could retire? And so for some of you, it's going to be comfort. This is basically, you've got a nice house paid off, you've got some kids, and you're just living a comfortable life, making £4,000 or £5,000 a month, dollars a month, euros a month, passively. And you're not like rich by any stretch of the imagination, but you're comfortable enough to live a life with no financial stress. The second one is freedom. This is where you might want to travel, and you want a little bit more freedom to basically go where you want, whenever you want, with who you want, travel the world, etc., etc., which is a little bit more expensive. And then the third one is status, where if you have comfort and freedom, obviously you have status comes with that. You can have status as an add-on, if that makes sense. And status is when you're concerned with the Instagram image and the suits and the watches and the cars and the yachts and the jets and all this stuff. And that's where you might need more, right? Maybe upwards of 500k a year, depending on how big your ego is, right? So what you need to do right now is I want you to just think of this number in your head, write down how much money you want to make per year passively after tax that would make you happy. And that's going to be based on these 3 things, okay? I'm going to do 100,000 a year just for the sake of this video to keep it simple. You might need more, you might need less, but that's the thing. Once we know this figure, we know the conditions for our retirement. So my figure when I was 18 is I wanted to be able to make about $8,334 per month in passive income, which I was able to achieve by sort of 23, 24. And so once you've defined what you want, and you should have this number in your head now with no work and no tax, we can start getting some work done here. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what is this number 4% of? Because in order for us to make this money and have this money enter our bank account, we need to have something called what I would call a stack, okay? Which is basically a sum of money or a sum of assets, liquid assets, low risk asset classes that basically pay you, okay? And I'm going to explain how to get them in a second. For me, $100,000, 4% of that, well, that is 4% of 2.5 million. What this means is that if I want to make 100k a year passively, I need to have $2.5 million at a 4% interest rate or a 4% ROI to make this. And so for you, if you wanted 200k a year, it'd be 5 million. If you wanted 300k a year, it's going to be 7.5 million. If you want 50k a year, it's 1.25 million. Okay. What this does is this illuminates the number that we need to aggregate over the next decade or 5 years in order for this to happen. Okay. So once you know this, now you know your conditions, and I'm going to put this here. Now you know your conditions for retirement, which means if you had this amount of money at a very low risk, very long-term return rate of 4%, you get 100k. Now, the reason you might be thinking, but Charlie, I know that some are asset classes and some it's possible to get like a 7% return on investment or a 6% return on investment on money. People talk about like houses having a 7% return, certain stocks having a 7% return. I'm assuming a average return on investment of 5%. And then what I'm doing, I'm taking 20% off of this to get 4%. Why do we remove the 20%? Tax. So if you are living in a tax country, you're going to get taxed on something called capital gains. At least that's how it works in the UK. And certain countries are going to have different income tax brackets and stuff like that, depending on how much you make. So I'm assuming that you're going to be taxed at least 20% on all the money you make because it's capital gains and not income. In some countries, it's going to be less than it would be if it was actual, income, but you can play around with this. And the reason that we're not assuming a 7% return or a 6% return is purely for pessimism. The more pessimistic we are with our planning, the better it goes. Usually, pessimism is prudent planning, okay? So now that we've got your number in place, we're gonna move on to an idea that I call the bucket. Now, before we get into step 2, which is how to actually make the money and what asset classes to use, all that really important stuff, let me just explain a concept to you, okay? Making money and retiring, imagine you have a bucket that looks like this with a nice handle. And on this bucket, we have a little faucet like this. Let's just pretend this is a faucet. And then over here, we have what I want to call a reservoir, French term for store of water. And in this reservoir, we have a lot of water. Now, the way this works is the reservoir that we have highlighted here represents a market. It represents a market or a niche, so to speak, right, in business. What we're looking to do in order to make money is we are extracting money, or in this case, water, from the reservoir, and we are trying to pour as much as possible into our bucket. Now, your bucket is basically your net worth. What we're doing is, slowly we're going to start building this up. At the beginning, you have a little bit, and then a little bit more, a little bit more. The size of the bucket depends on the size of the amount of money aggregated that we just discussed. So in this case, this would be a $2.5 million bucket, okay? And so what that means is if this bucket was full to the brim, all the way up, and we had all the money in the world for 2.5 million, then it's got, then we're good. And then basically the cool thing about this bucket is imagine it's a magical bucket. And basically what happens every single year is this bucket magically spits out a little bit of water. It spits out 4% of its contents, but that is replaced year over year. So it's not like you drain the bucket. This thing is self-sustaining. So every time it spits out 4%, it just basically goes back to where it was before at 2.5 million. And this 4% is basically what you can live off. And this is what you can spend. And this is why we need to decide how much money we want, because then we calculate 4% of that, and that's what we live off. And this is why it can take up to a decade for this to happen, because we need 2.5 million, right? Now, the sad thing is this all looks great, but there's 2 problems. At the bottom here, we have holes. Not good. What a lot of people have in their financial lives is they have multiple holes in their bucket. And it does not matter how much money they can get from the market or how much water they can take from the reservoir, an equivalent amount always seems to flow out. And this is something that we need to address. And that's kind of how we're going to move on to the next step here. And so step 2, before we talk about how to earn the money, and I'm going to walk you through a very simple framework that's going to blow your mind that will help you make these millions, we need to spend less, okay? The point I'm making is that if you learn how to make lots of money, but your ego and your taxation and your lifestyle inflates with that money, it means that it doesn't matter how much you make, you're always going to spend the equivalent. And so really there's 2 places that we can fight the battle of spending less. The first one is taxation, and the second one is lifestyle, okay? And your lifestyle is almost always going to be predicated on your ego or your desires or something like that. And I call this psych tax, because what this is, when you spend money on yourself, on something that isn't essential, like clothing, food, water, relationships, etc. When you spend money on yourself, it's like your psychology is taxing your bank account because it wants something, it needs something, it's spending money to get something for itself, right? We'll attack this in one of 2 ways. The first thing is the tax thing. It is significantly easier for you to retire in the next 10 years if you live in a low or no tax country. You don't have to move, but I strongly suggest you do, because once you apply my earning potential technique that I'm going to give you in a second, you can make money. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not millions of dollars a year. But if you're paying tax, it's just slower. So whether you decide to move to a low tax country or stay on your own depends on the speed at which you want to get rich and retire. So let's say, for example, that you live in the UK and therefore you're paying a 25% profit tax on everything you make, which is true, by the way. It makes me sick to my stomach, which is why I live in Dubai, and a 40% income tax. Let's just say that to live in an average European country or certain parts of the world, let's just say it's a 40% tax, right? What this means is is it's just going to take you 40% longer to get rich and retire. So if by living in a low tax country, it could have taken you 10 years, if you live in a high tax country, it might take you 14, 15, 16 years, if that makes sense. And that's the argument of tax, is it's not about paying the tax, it's about how quickly you can accumulate enough wealth in order for you to move. Now, the second thing is this lifestyle thing. And this is just basic discipline. Don't spend money on stuff you don't need. What you want to do is you want to start taking pride in frugality. I've made nearly $30 million and accumulated a lot of that in my bank, and I still wear a Casio. This t-shirt's from River Island. It costs like £20, right? I take a lot of pride in frugality and in having lots of money but not spending it, with the one exception of my house, but we can all allow for some cope, right? But don't spend money. Every dollar you spend is a dollar you didn't save, which is a dollar that is taking away time from you retiring. The whole objective here is to compress the time frame that it takes for us to retire. And every time, if we have a dollar, this dollar can either go to your retirement or it can go to your ego. Every dollar you spend, with the exception of imperative living circumstances like rent, like food, like water, like just basic necessities, everything you spend, it can either go to your retirement or it can go to your psychology and your ego, okay? So let's not. Now, this isn't to say that you can't have a bit of fun, have a good time, but until your earning potential is significantly greater than your spending potential, which is basically how much you spend, don't spend a thing. Now, step number 3 is your earning potential, okay? Your EP, earning potential. And this is basically how much potential you have to earn money, okay? And this is incredibly straightforward, because the problem is a lot of people have very low earning potentials. And what that means is their income caps at 20, 30, 40, 50K, 100K a year. Even 100K a year is not a strong enough earning potential for you to retire in the next 10 years. Because let's just do the math on that. Let's say that you're a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer and you're making 100K a year and you work for 10 years. Your net income is still only going to be $1 million, which might sound ridiculous, like it's only $1 million, but that's not enough for you to get what you need and what you want to retire in the time from which you want to do it, right? So we need to have earning potentials of 3, 4, 500K a year so that we can actually compress this time frame and get it done, right? So how do we increase earning potential? Well, it's very straightforward. It's skill set, but there's 2 things you need to know, okay? There's 2 skills that you need to know, skill 1 and skill 2. Let me explain how money works, okay? So money is made. That's what we want to do. We want to make. So money is made when value is created. So what this means is if we want to make money, what is the inverse flow of money? If we want to take money from the market, what do we have to give to the market in return? Well, it's value. How the hell do you create value? Well, value is created when pain is alleviated. Because if you assess pretty much any financial transaction in the history of the world, the only reason we buy things is usually to alleviate pain. If we go even further with this, how do we alleviate pain? Well, we alleviate pain when we solve problems. If you want to make money, and if you want to drastically increase your earning potential, you're not going to get there with a normal job or even a normal career or even a good career that would be considered, like $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. How do we do it? Well, to make money, we have to add value. To add value, we have to alleviate pain. And the way we do this is by solving problems. And so what we need to do is learn how to solve a problem. And so what you need to understand is you're going to have a business or a career or something doing this. And in this business, you're going to be serving people. Because, where do we get money from? We get it from other people, right? So these are people. And basically, in business, we have what is called a niche, which is an aggregate or a group of people that have affinity through identity. For example, it's a group of people like content creators or authors or young mums or pregnant women or, I'm going to stop using female examples, but you get my point, right? Group of people that have affinity. And when you have a niche, which could be anything from gym owners to League of Legends players to people that wear over-ear headphones, right? These people have problems. And usually there's like a number 1 problem. And this is basically the most painful problem that this niche shares. And the cool thing about making money is if someone's got a painful problem, they'll pay to solve it, because the easiest way to add value is to remove pain. The whole reason human beings do anything is usually pain avoidance. And so it's a pretty good justification to spend money is alleviating pain. For example, if you're hungry, really hungry, you'll buy a sandwich, and the hungrier you are, i.e. the more pain you're in, the more money you will spend on that sandwich. If you don't trust me, go 2 days without eating, and then imagine there's only one shop within 100 miles of you. They could charge you $100 for a sandwich and you'd eat it because you're so starving, right? So we find number 1 problem, and then your job, and this is the easiest fast track way to increase your earning potential to make these millions of dollars. Your job is to become number one. And what this means is you have to basically be the best in the world at solving this problem. Now you might ask me, well, why do I have to be the best in the world? The reason you have to be the best in the world is because of price. Because when you are number one and when you're the best in the world, you can charge the highest prices. And remember, what we're trying to do here is compress the time frame in which you basically get rich and that you can retire. If we want to compress that time frame, it means we need to make as much money as fast as possible. And the more you charge per customer, the less customers you need to get to make more money. So for example, if one person charges $1,000 and another person charges $2,000, then the person charging $2,000 only needs 5 customers. But the person charging $1,000 needs 10. And it's way easier to get 5 customers than it is 10. And the only way you can justify higher prices than the average competitor you have is by being better than them, okay? But the story doesn't stop there, because not only do you need to have your skill in terms of being good at one specific thing, and it could literally be anything from helping people who do horse show jumping do their first like fancy show jump that I way out of my depth with this example, but you know what I mean, right? It could be helping League of Legends players reach Challenger rank from Diamond 2. I'd show my age there. I used to play League of Legends, regretfully, right? But skill. You need to learn your skill, become number one, and then charge as much as you possibly can. But then the second thing that you need is you need to know marketing, or you need to know sales. Because it's not good enough to just be the best and to have the highest prices. If you want people to buy from you and trust you, you either need to know marketing or you need to know sales. And so what you're going to do is, I'm not confining you to one model. It doesn't have to be just drop shipping or software or consulting or service-based business. You can do any business, but these businesses are going to break into 2 different categories. And these products that you sell can be broken into 2 categories. And that is that they're either sold through marketing or they're sold through sales. And what I mean by this is products that can be sold through marketing are sold on a website exclusively without human interaction. And products sold through sales are sold through human interaction, like on a Zoom sales call or a phone call or an in-person meeting, if that makes sense. And so once you know what you're going to do and which market you've picked and which niche you've picked and which problem you're picking, and you'll know like, okay, I'm solving it by this. And it should then become pretty apparent to you whether you need to get customers through marketing or sales. Here's the cool thing about earning potential. If you know how to get people results and solve the problem, and you know how to market to them or sell them, now your earning potential has just skyrocketed by just learning those 2 things. Literally by learning how to solve a painful problem and learning how to sell that solution, your earning potential goes from, maybe 50K a year tops, depending on your qualifications, to like 500K a year. And I know this to be true because when I was 23, I was making $1 million a year. Actually, it was like nearly $2 million a year at that point, by selling a real niche product that helped micro gyms in the United States with lead acquisition. That was what I did. And I've got loads of friends trust me, I've got loads of friends. I've got friends that sell all sorts of stuff. I've got a guy that I know who makes like 30K a month. And what he does is he provides divorce lawyers with personal virtual assistants to manage a specific type of paperwork. And so your niche can be anything. And you don't have to create a Facebook, or you don't have to create some new thing or be Elon Musk or create some massive idea. You just need to find a problem, become the best in the world at solving that, and then get really good at communicating that you can solve that, which is sales or marketing, and then bang, it's over. Now that we've talked about how to increase your earning potential and how to stop basically spending and where your money is going, we're going to talk about the last thing, which is basically where to actually invest the money you make, okay? And so what we need to do is we're building a low-risk, long-term asset plan. And we want low-risk, long-term assets. And really there's 3 that I invest in that I think you should probably invest in as well. And this is not financial advice, by the way, because I'm particularly illiterate when it comes to financial advice. So do not take this as financial advice. This is what I do, okay? So I invest in, 1, the S&P 500, which is the collection, an aggregate bunch of all the best companies in the world. Very unlikely that they're all going to fail at once, so it's quite safe. The second thing is USA Treasury bonds. And then the third thing is high interest banks. So the S&P 500, US Treasury bonds, and high interest banks. And the S&P 500 you can get through a broker. US Treasury bonds, I think brokers do this, but some banks do this as well. And then high interest bank accounts you can get
banks will give you 4%, 5%. S&P 500 average return of like 6-7%. USA Treasury bonds could be like 4, 3 or 5%. High interest banks, once again, 4, 3, 5%. It's going to average out at that sort of like 4, 5% mark, which is kind of what we're gunning for. We're not buying houses and property, because the thing with buying a house and renting it out is now you've got another business, and yeah, it could be a 7 or 8% return, but the issue with owning property is now you've got to think about the property, and what that does is it takes time away from your earning potential in your business, which is your main source of income. So you split your focus, you end up making less. So you want these low risk, long-term passive asset classes, which is why we need significantly more money, because we're not actively investing, okay? And if you're wondering, what brokers you can use in terms of where you can, buy these assets or whatever the hell. First of all, you want your banking structure. You kind of want to have like 4 or 5 banks, because if you have like $2-3 million, you want to spread that across like 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 banks. But the same thing goes for your brokers as well. So there's lots of different brokers, and I'm not recommending these, but I'm not going to tell you which ones I use, because I don't know actually what I can and cannot say based on financial advice. But you can use eToro, you can use 212 Trading, you can use Fidelity, you can use interactive brokers. Once again, these are not recommendations, these are just off the top of my head. Interactive brokers, there's one called Sarah. You can just Google most brokers are pretty decent, right? But you need to make sure you're looking at their fees and everything. I'm not telling you which ones to use, it's up to you. The final thing that I'm gonna leave you with is how to basically 10x your earning potential. And this is kind of cool, and this is a pretty interesting step 5, basically, is 10x your EP. How do you 10x your earning potential? You teach. The second that you figure out how to make consistent, steady income with your skill, what you can start doing is teaching other people how to make money with that skill. You've probably seen lots of gurus online flexing Lamborghinis and watches and houses and stuff. They all sell courses. It's always a course, right? It could be a dropshipping course, could be an SMA course, could be an affiliate marketing course, could be a real estate investing course. And the question that pops into your mind is, well, if you're so good, why are you selling a course on how to do it instead of making money through it? And that is because I also sell courses, but it's a higher ticket, right? We understand that it's easier to make money, and it's way more profitable to teach how to make money than it is to actually make it yourself. It's kind of crazy, but it works. And instead of judging it, you should use it. You can't beat them, join them. If you're in a gold rush, you don't dig for gold, you sell shovels. Because there's no guarantee you're going to find the gold, but there's a guarantee that there's going to be people trying to find it. And so what you want to do is, as soon as you achieve, a good income selling your skill, if it applies, go to the big market, go to the biz op market, business opportunity market is what we call it. And that way, you can just basically blow up your income, because the total available market addressable to you just increases by 10x, and everything is better because everyone's so emotional. Like you are right now, you're looking for a shiny object to latch onto, and there's a chance that if I pitched you a course now, you'd be inclined to buy it, which would make me money, which I'm not going to do. I have nothing for you to buy. But you get my point. You want to go to teaching, and then, my goodness me, if you start teaching and you start selling like a course on how to do this, and you start YouTube, you buy a little car, buy a watch, suddenly tens of thousands of people want to learn from you, and you can make a ton of money. So that is how to retire. Take care.